for education, they use it for connection, they use it for learning, they use it for connecting with their friends. Yes, there are all those. There's the other side of technology that we know, but sometimes we focus so much on that we don't see the potential of this context and method that is available for us to do what? To do ministry. So that's what we are saying. Where is the harvest? As those who are concerned about mission, where is the harvest in our own ministry context? And how do we partner with Jesus in doing the work that he is doing? Case study of Paul and circumcision. There've been a few videos going around on FGM that have put people on edge, wondering, are we still fighting these issues today? But that is not why I'm here, in case this arouses some of our emotions. But how does Paul handle these two of his proteges, his disciples, when it comes to circumcision? If we could have two people just read for us these two texts to make the point again before we make progress. So Acts 16, 1-3, one person can open and read for us, and then we can read Galatians 2, 3-5. Acts 16, 1-3. Yes, please.
16, verse 1-3. And he came also to Diaspora. The disciple was there, named Timothy, the son of a Jewish woman who was a believer. But his father was a Greek. They were spoken of by the brethren Presbyterian and Diaspora. Paul wanted Timothy to accompany him, and he took him and circumcised him because of the Jews that were in those places. For they all knew that his father was a Jew.
All right. Thank you for the clear reading, Paul and Timothy. Galatians 2, 3-5. Someone else who can read for us? Galatians 2, 3-5. Yeah, please.
Because of false brethren secretly brought in, who came in by still to spy out our liberty, which we have in Christ Jesus, that they might bring us into bondage.
All right, thank you so much. So we have these two young people, Titus and Timothy, and Paul with this issue of circumcision, and we certainly know maybe the theological significance. What do you think? He must be confused because he's saying I am following this route, and then he says he's going this other route. What do you think?
I think.
Yes.
Nobody else wants to say that in the first instance with Timothy, he was with a Jewish community, and circumcision was important to him. And then in the second situation, he was in a Gentile community where circumcision became an obstacle to the gospel instead of an entryway into it.
Very good. When you are asking questions, usually we don't give the chairperson or chair lady, the important people. I was waiting for you to answer. You see now what happens. She answers correctly, and I can't even make the argument. But that's a very good way to summarize it. So we understand, and we will see even in our story today of the Samaritan woman, the gospel is very central to us, and that's why we are here. We are passionate about it. And I was also listening to our speaker this morning, just reminding us that this is what unites us as believers. But we find Paul here doing two things, and that's true. That sometimes in our ministry, we are called to engage in different strategies for the sake of the gospel. The gospel is the same. It is that we are, by grace through faith, we are justified, and there are all those other good things of salvation, right? We are sanctified and we will be glorified. There are all those nice things. But Paul here engages in kind of two strategies. because of his context. That's what we're talking about, ministry in context. So, of course, the background, that's very good. He's fully Greek. Timothy is half Greek, stroke half Jew. And then the audience, that's a question we should always be asking as we are preaching, as we are teaching, as we are want to do evangelism. I was serving in a congregation in an urban context, PCL Oresho. If you go there with loudspeakers and do a crusade, the police will be called to get you out of that place. But within other contexts, of course, we need to do the crusades and we'll go to door and etc., because different contexts will call for different strategies. So who is our audience is a question we are always invited to ask as those who are passionate about mission. Timothy's audience is Jewish, we have heard that, and Titus' audience is not. Titus' audience is not. In fact, for Titus, people want him to be circumcised so as to say, salvation comes by works. And if Paul does that, agrees to that claim, then he will have made the gospel of no consequence. And yet Paul has been saying that the gospel comes by grace, by faith through grace, by grace through faith in Christ, in what Christ has done. And so if he does this for Titus, it will put the gospel at stake. So of course, as we contextualize, we must be wise, we must consider the audience. But we also have a strategy. What is a strategy? How can the gospel best advance in the context in which I am serving? That must be the question that I ask myself. We will quickly realize, even here in Nairobi, the makeup of the churches, right? We like to generalize ministry in, say, Africa. We may think all ministry is like this, but if you go to pockets of congregations and communities of faith, we find that there are very many differences. Here in Nairobi itself, churches are very diverse. You have peri-urban churches, you have urban churches, etc., etc. So what is our missionary strategy? How can the gospel best advance? As we move towards the end, the last half or last quarter of our conversation, I like to point us to the conversation of Jesus by the well and draw three principles when we are thinking about contextualizing ministry. So John 4, 1 to 26, the story that is well known to us, and I'll read it so that we can hear clearly, because not all of us have the mic. Let me read it quickly and then we look at a few things and look at three principles. Then we have a conversation at the end. I'm reading from the ESV. The word of God says, "Now when Jesus learned that the Pharisees had heard that Jesus was making and baptizing more disciples than John, although Jesus himself did not baptize but only his disciples, he left Judea and departed again for Galilee. And he had to pass through Samaria. So he came to a town of Samaria called Sychar, near the field that Jacob had given to his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there, so Jesus, wearied as he was from his journey, was sitting beside the well. It was about the 6th hour. A woman from Samaria came to draw water. Jesus said to her, 'Give me a drink.' For his disciples had gone away into the city to buy food." You can see how the stomach is important in our day-to-day life. The Samaritan woman said to him, "How is it that you, a Jew, ask for a drink from me, a woman of Samaria? For Jews have no dealings with Samaritans." Jesus answered her, "If you knew the gift of God and who it is that is saying to you, 'Give me a drink,' you would have asked him and he would have given you living water." The woman said to him, "Sir, you have nothing to draw water with and the well is deep. Where do you get that living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob? He gave us the well and drank from it himself, as did his sons and his livestock." Jesus said to her, "Everyone who drinks of this water will be thirsty again. But whoever drinks of the water that I will give him will continues. The woman said to him, "Sir, give me this water so that I will not be thirsty or have to come here to to draw water. Jesus said to her, go, call your husband and come here. The woman answered him, I have no husband. Jesus said to her, you are right in saying I have no husband. For when we look at your Twitter and Facebook, you have had 5 husbands. And the one you now have is not your husband. In fact, your call log is showing us that you've been calling many people. What you have said is true. The woman said to him, sir, I perceive that you are a prophet. Our fathers worshipped on this mountain, but you say that in Jerusalem is a place where people ought to worship. Jesus said to her, woman, on this mountain or in Jerusalem will you worship the Father? You worship what you do not know. We worship what we know, for salvation is from the Jews. But the hour is coming and is now here when the true worshippers will worship the Father in spirit and truth. For the Father is seeking such people to worship him. God is spirit, and those who worship him must worship in spirit and truth. The woman said to him, I know that Messiah is coming, he who is called Christ. When he comes, he will tell us these things. Jesus said to her, I who speak am here. This is a well-known story, and we will not dig into it so much. I just wanted to draw us to this onion. In intercultural studies, we talk about the culture onion, right? And we say that as we are engaging people from other cultures, we need to go mos, pole pole, yeah? There's that illustration given of elephants when they are drinking water from a pond. You know, they go in backing slowly, looking for space, then they now can drink. But if we go in a confrontational way, we may lose the essence of the gospel. And we see this very powerfully modeled for us by Christ. I like the sermon that was reminding us that Jesus, again, that's the point, right? He's not looking for because there are many boundaries that are established in our engagements in ministry. I don't know what boundaries you can think of in your own context. What are some of those boundaries that are placed as we are engaging in ministry, as you have been engaging in ministry? Boundaries without the leakage that is on the wall. Yeah, you can just mention them in your context. Yeah. Political, yeah? So you nusu mkate, this kind of things, yeah? If we support one side, we may get half a bread. So politics, any other boundaries in our context of mission, ministry? Yeah. Language, right? So if you don't speak our language, and we are still soldiering on in that good fight here in PCA. What other boundary can you think about?
Human sexuality.
Human sexuality, big one. Thank you, Doc. Rev. Yeah, so human sexuality, a big one. Again, we were looking at, I've been doing youth ministry for some time, but in the past 3 years, the number of times that I have been called, and the friends who we do ministry with, been called to talk on sexuality has been radically increasing, because it is something big. I know it's certainly big in other parts of the globe, like for our brothers and sisters who are here, but as well in many places also in Africa, it is a point of conversation. This woman, of course, begins that way, right? You, Jesus, you are a Jew. I am a Samaritan. Another layer is, you are not just a Jew and I am a Samaritan. You are a Jewish man and I am a Samaritan woman. Now that is, the stakes are high. We are wondering what will Jesus do? You know, will he begin saying, you know, people the way they say, you know, men are dash. I don't know what women usually are called to be, yeah. But you're wondering, will Jesus engage in this confrontation? How will he weave his way through this conversation? But we see how he carefully peels the layers. In fact, how the conversation starts is what? Give me water. You know, many times I think the way we think of mission and evangelism in our context is, We sometimes have these tools. I don't know, one of the tools I learned or I was taught by those who taught me evangelism was something called the 4 spiritual laws. Yeah, everyday conversation. I am thirsty, do you have some water? And that opens up a discussion, and we'll be looking at the 3 principles as we close. But this, that first layer that Jesus has to kind of deal with. And then as the conversation goes on, Jesus also presses on the personal narrative. So when we're doing ministry, especially ministry in context, we must be aware of some of the barriers. The ethnic barrier could be there. And so if I am a Presbyterian minister serving in Western Kenya, I must acknowledge that as something. I must be careful in how I'm using language, because already there is that barrier. And if I use language in a certain way, then it pushes people who would otherwise draw nearer to Christ away, because they're saying what? In fact, this is that church. Yeah. And so we must be careful of the ethnic layers or barriers that are there. But then Christ begins having a conversation with her. Go bring your husbands. your husband, actually. He asks for one husband, but there are many. And so Jesus moves beyond these barriers and begins to get closer to the heart of the woman and find out exactly what is her story. And in many times as we are doing ministry is really about people. Right, and we want to hear their stories and how we as the servants of Christ could draw them nearer to Christ. And of course this woman will not let it go. She then says what? But you know we worship. But you know we are Christian and you are, you know we are Jews and you are this. You know we are atheists and you are this. There are these barriers that still lie at hand, but Jesus will not let it go. Eventually Jesus gets to the heart of the gospel and presents himself as the sum of what this woman is looking for. Jesus goes beyond the barriers and eventually goes to the heart of the gospel, which is what we must do in any ministry encounter. So what are the 3 principles we can learn from this story as I conclude? Principle 1, we want to listen. We want to listen. Conversation before confrontation. Conversation before confrontation. Yes, the gospel, we see Jesus Christ will still present himself as the one who can satisfy the longings of this woman. We know that John actually in his gospel presents those I ams of Christ, and there are many. I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. Confrontation, yeah? I am the bread of life. I am the gate, I am, the truth, etc., etc. But before Jesus gets there, he is having a conversation. He is listening to the woman at the well. I think that's one thing we can learn. If we are to do contextual ministry, then we must listen before we preach. We like to preach, but we must listen before we preach. Number 2, we see the church outside the 4 walls. To see the church outside the 4 walls. We see the church outside the 4 walls. What resources do we have in the places of ministry where we are engaged in, outside the walls of the church? I think I am afraid that sometimes we have an inward-looking posture sometimes in our ministries, that we are thinking about our own selves. How do we grow? How can we get more people? But sometimes how can we be more comfortable in this congregation? But sometimes we're not thinking about the church beyond the 4 walls. We're not thinking about the people who we are shepherding from Monday to Saturday. Where are they? And how do we equip them to do the work of Christ in the marketplace? There have been discussions in the area of mission called in what we would call integral mission. And here, people say that, I saw one of I think the gentleman who was here had behind his shirt, John 10:10. I have come that they may have life and have it in abundance. So the integral mission people, they say, what Christ's goal for people is that they would have knowledge in their head. Of course, knowledge of Christ, but also knowledge for daily life. Is that they may have food in their stomach. Because if they don't have food in their stomach, how will they listen to you preaching? And they must have money in their hands. Whether it's little money or a lot of money, but they must have money for daily need. And so they talk about mission as integral, ministry as holistic. The simple word is holistic. Holistic ministry. That we are proclaiming the gospel in word and deed. And we see that Jesus in many other places will be doing that. He goes and sees a crowd and he has what? Compassion for them. He has compassion for them. Do we have compassion for the people who we minister to? Or are we like salespeople? How many souls were won for Christ? And someone the other day was asking, what happens to the bodies when we win the souls? Of course, on a light note. But do we have compassion for the people? Do we see the value of these people who are ministering to and the context in which they are serving? And are we discipling them from Monday to Saturday, most of their life? Christian principles so that they may point others to Christ in the way they conduct themselves, seeing the church outside the four walls. And the last one is to move from the known to the unknown. I am thirsty. Do you have some water? Yeah. What are those ordinary opportunities I have in my ministry context to begin ordinary conversations that can then be drawn into the claims of Christ or who Christ is? But what are those ordinary conversations that I have? I must move from the known to the unknown. This woman knows many things. She knows the value of water. She knows the well of her forefathers and foremothers. She knows about her religion and ethnicity. And Jesus is using all this to draw her finally to himself. It's what Paul will be doing as well in the book of Acts. If you notice his missionary strategy. For example, in Acts 17, and he's speaking there to the Athenian philosophers, and he will move from the known to the unknown. When he is with the Jews, he will go to the Old Testament and expound Christ from the Old Testament because the Jews know, they are familiar with the Old Testament. But when he goes to the Greeks in Acts 17, he will engage with their thinking, but still go to finally to the living and true God, as he says. So we move from the known to the unknown. What opportunities do I have in my ministry context? Ordinary conversations, ordinary resources. We can talk about the weather. We can begin conversations with the weather. It is hot. Indeed, it is hot. But Jesus is hotter. How do we move from the known to the unknown? Brothers and sisters, this is what I had for us this morning, and I wanted to spend more time to hear your thoughts, critics, comments, views as we move along the program. So asanteni sana for giving me your time and eyes and ears. Thank you. So our boss can facilitate.
It was too short. Why don't you continue?
Lauren told me, but I don't want to talk too long, then I begin talking to myself when you fall asleep. I think it's just thought-provoking so that we can engage, because I think it is in that, to hear Mchungaji, your context of ministry, for me, I think would be more enriching for us. And how it connects with what you're saying. Lauren.
Yes. Thank you, Kevin. Maybe we can appreciate him again. And we did want this to be a time of engagement when we can have a broader conversation. So maybe if you have any questions or comments or something that you've heard that you connected with, or even a story from your own context, about ministry. We would love to hear that. Yes, Dr. Kiriakou.
I want to go first, and thank you so much. That was an awesome presentation and thought-provoking. Should I stand?
Yeah, please stand.
I'm sorry.
And we can try and give you a microphone.
I think, first of all, I want to hear your thoughts. I thought maybe you would push that further about that online, offline. Okay. And the fact that now that we are going back to the normal after COVID, and there's the huge push that, hey, we need to forget this online thing, we need to come physically to a space. And And what do you think about that? You know, that it's like we're going back instead of moving forward. That is one. Secondly, we had a talk yesterday about Marsabek. And the issue of ethnicity culture was huge in religion and how it has impacted the ministers, and I think he can speak, more strongly and with the right word about his context. And I left this space still wrestling with that here is a minister and many Christians who want to do good, who want to reach a community that has a way of life. And that is how they have lived for years. And we are not talking of the days when missionaries were coming. We are talking of 2023. That these people have a way of life, they have the way, and how to connect as Christ did connect in a way that is meaningful for the church. And the final, the building. We had a visiting preacher at our space not too long ago. And he told us he's putting up a huge building somewhere. I wouldn't say where because you might know who it is. And so we had a conversation. We went to lunch together. And the kind of money he was talking about, putting in that building, and you did mention something of that is see the church outside of the four walls. That is literally putting up four walls, using so much, yet not moving out. 2023.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Thank you, Dr. Kiriakou.
I think I can begin with those three. Online, Marsabit, and buildings. That's what my summarized. The online, offline, the digital space. And I think I would speak this especially from the context of youth ministry, especially because they're the ones who are mostly in that space. But what we do, I think we have the command really to pass on the gospel to the next generation. And I think what that will entail definitely will be engaging this space. It is interesting if you look at how young people are engaging with social media, the people they are already in that space. And sometimes I say if we can't afford to be silent when the world is shouting. We can't afford to be silent when the world is shouting. So the world already offers people very many options online. The question is for us, concerned about the gospel, what are we doing in that space? And I'm happy, Dr. Kasisi, I know you are doing something in that space. But we can't go back. I think in my own context, I saw how the digital space became very helpful. We've been doing ministry. Apologetics Kenya is a ministry that seeks to engage the questions that the young people are asking concerning the Christian faith. And we would host monthly meetings. But during COVID, we actually transitioned, in a sense. Most of our engagements are online. And we saw how wide the reach was. We're actually running a certificate program that equips people, and actually we are going through it. It's interesting that we have some people from the States, some people from in other parts of Africa. So just the potential. If we are really concerned about the gospel for the nations, that means that it must be going out. And I think the digital space offers us an opportunity. For those of us maybe who feel, well, I don't have the skills, I'm not equipped, there are, can we go for some training? Can we, maybe the missions conference next time can help us to think through how to engage the digital space. What skills do we need? How can we do it? And I know some people here who are already doing that in their congregations. But I mean, the ship has sailed. The ship has sailed. Anyone who is saying we will not have some engagement on the digital space, I think, would be losing out in what God is doing. God has given us this opportunity. You can imagine if we said we go back to the scrolls of Isaiah, and we have the Bible today, and we have phones that people can access the gospel wherever they are. So that would be my some quick points on the point of the online ministry. We can't be offline if people are online. I know there are other conversations, and here I can see senior theologians here around. Those are valid, but people are thinking about them. For example, the concept of community or fellowship. What does that mean in light of the technological space? I'm happy that there are people who are grappling with these questions theologically. But for me, I see it from a missions perspective. It is a wonderful, imagine you can just share your sermon and it goes somewhere. You know, some people are joining us from other, that is amazing. So the missiological significance for me is what I think we can push. Now when it comes to church, how do we do church? What does that mean for fellowship? What does that mean for sacraments? I will leave that to the theologians to discuss. Number 2 was on culture. I think, well, it would be what are our priorities in mission? So is it that, let me not call it a capitalism, but is it about winning souls? I mean, what is it about? Is it really compassion for the people so that we are willing to do the hard work? I would assume my brother here, I mean, that is hard work. That is hard work. But as a church, I think as a denomination, we are giving our brother the ultimate support that he needs to do the work. When we look at our budgets, do our budgets go to do that work? Right, so I think for me it is priorities in ministry. Where are our priorities? I think if we have the right priorities, then I think the work is not easy, and it can be easy, but we will put the requisite resources to support that work, whether it is financial, but also just encouragement, you know, when we look at the missions, sorry?
Even training.
Sorry?
I said even training.
Training, yeah, it could be those things. Do we train? Do we just go and encourage our brother? Or will we go to other? So I think those are just provoking questions. So what is our priority when it comes to mission in those LRPs, least reached people groups or unreached areas? Very important. But we also expand our thinking to think about then also how do we reach people within our own spaces? Yeah, so that mission is broader than just going to far areas and countries, but what are the opportunities also of mission? Where we are. Where we are. And it's simple as that for local churches, yes, we need to be visiting our brother Nje here and giving him the encouragement, but what are the challenging areas near our community, where our church is placed? Before, as we go to Marsabit, we also go to the Kijiji near there and do mission. So it's not very complex. The opportunities I think are there. We need the right priorities as well to support those who are serving in those areas. The last question? The big churches. Again, I think riding onto that last point, priorities. It seems to me, again, let me make let's think about it practically in a local church context. We are always arguing about what color of seats, how padded they should be, what the theme of the walls. We are thinking about the structures rather than having the same passion and burden for the people. And I say I mean, I know there are teachers here as well. In church and administration, I like to say that structures and people. Structures and people. Structures and people. And people. And people. What will it cost to gain the whole building and lose the members? Yeah, we certainly know of many churches also in Nairobi that are very big. But where are the people to fill those churches? And so I think it is okay if we can build, but then where is our priority insofar as we are doing ministry? So can our budgets be turned instead to go to the Kijiji and do ministry there? Or we say we will put aside some money to support Njehe and the work he's doing in Marsabit? So it's an issue of priorities, and I think we just need to to straighten up ourselves and think about the gospel in the hearts of people.
Thank you. Yes, Reverend Van Yorke.
Thank you so much. Moredi, I'm so appreciative. I'm sorry I couldn't remember you, many years ago since I served in St. Andrew's Church. And when I listen to you, I hear the voice of my two daughters. And last year, 31st December, I spent the whole night listening to young people. That's how I crossed over the new year, because the young people are saying they're not so much interested in our buildings. That's one of the reasons they feel very uncomfortable with our churches. They want us to meet the needs of the people and to go out into the world and see and experience what they're going through. There's a book I've written, and then I'll ask you a question about this. Pastor Self-Care and Work-Life Balance. And in that book, I've written that over 200 years, the church has gone through 4 scenarios. One was the agricultural stage, where the pastor was like a patriarch, and the people looked to him as the author because he was a compass, the spiritual compass of the people. And people looked to him as a counselor. And then after the agricultural scenario, there came the industrial age, where again we had the establishment of the theological schools, and the pastor now became a theologian. We wanted a pastor who is trained, and that was the creation of the cathedrals that we can see. And then after that, there came the information scenario, where the pastor now became the CEO. And people, that's the creation of mega churches. And the people are coming to church to listen, the CEO. And he was the custodian of the truth. But then I think we've gone from all those, and we were just coming to the stage of innovation, creativity, and participation. But my concern with the COVID and the information, the technology, has slightly taken us back to the information scenario. Because during COVID, what happened to my church, we have like 150 members, they only needed me there and the information guy. And even today, actually, I'm going to invite you one of the Wednesdays, because I've done that now. I've had speakers from here. You wake up at 4 because of the time. And then you speak to us through Zoom. But the danger, I think, of the COVID and the information that has come is that the participation of the members, the innovation of members, the creativity of the members has lessened. Because you go to a church, just need the CEO, just need the pastor, and DJ, someone who can fix the computers. So where are my deacons? Where are my elders? They're all back at home. I need them here. And again, we need the fellowship. We know the PCA has grown the way it has grown because of the cell groups. The cell groups with COVID, no, we can go online. And we can see the pastor there preaching and live stream and all that. We don't need to go to church. We don't need to come together. So what is your comment on that? And where are we going? And how can we be able to integrate information and technology, and then innovation, creativity, and participation?
I don't know what the rest think. I think that's a difficult question, because we are still working at it, I think. I think maybe what COVID has done is to also take us back to more personalized ministry. So that if before we thought, well, we'll just put this building up and this is the PCA church and this is the XYZ church, or people will come. We are used to, we have these things we do, we have this order of service, etc., which is important and very helpful. I certainly agree, being myself a Presbyterian at heart. But I think I think COVID opened the eyes of our people to see beyond their own congregations. And people now are able to see what is happening in other places. In a sense, I think that's not a bad thing. I think it's broken down the barriers that sometimes we thought, that church, don't go there, or this church is like this. But now we see there are some good things going on in other communities of faith. Because after all, that's what we are saying in this conference, that God is interested in the different nations and the different people partnering together in the gospel. So I think it opened the eyes of our people. But too, I think then what it means, again, maybe in my own simple understanding would be the need for just more personalized ministry. That rather than people coming to us, I think COVID is reminding us also of the other side of us going to the people, So Christ, we find him, he's always moving to towns. He's with the people wherever they are. And sometimes I think we have thought, and that's again what I think, that's a transformation for us. It's difficult because we're used to people coming and we'll run the service. But COVID has shown us, the people may have just been coming because they were just coming. But now we need to go and find out, okay, why are you not coming? And I think in that then we may find some things to do. So I think it is just changing our view also in terms of ministry as going out to where people are. That is also ministry. Yeah, I was in a service in a university, and the preacher the other day was just talking about, every Sunday we are gathering, but we are gathering only to be commissioned to go out. That's the real business. Well, that's what is happening. Yes, we still have this great privilege to gather together on the Lord's Day and worship together. And there are certainly challenges there, but I think it may be asking that elder, hey, what's happening? Why are you not coming? Or that deacon and finding out, what happened? And we may find actually opportunities for ministry so that our people come back. I know the last point to say, it is not easy. I think it's a difficult thing because it's something we are still negotiating. And maybe we will know the actual effects of COVID in the years to come. I think it's not been easy for everyone. And people need our presence now more than ever, I would say.
Thank you, Daktari. It's a call for all of us to think about how we do mission and re-strategize again. Because times are changing, so our people and their mindsets. Chungaji, somebody's hand is up. Let's have
So thank you very much. I have captured something very, very important about mission, and what I was able to go to is the parable of Jesus Christ about the 99 against 1. That is the lost sheep, the parable of the lost sheep. In my own view, sometimes we may be very comfortable with the 99, and we forget that one lost one. Perhaps because it is uncomfortable to go looking for it in the cold, it could have been lost as far as Marsabit. We need to go to look for it so far, so we are unable to come out of our comfort zones. But the one that I would really want to mention of the three principles that you mentioned is seeing the church outside the four walls. And then I engaged myself and asked ourselves, how do we see the church outside the four walls? In my own view, for mission to be successful, in the Presbyterian church we have structures. The way the church is structured, there are certain groups that are very, very critical, very critical in achievement of this. And these groups, most of the times you have them in church. One of them is the one called Justice, Peace and Reconciliation Commission or Committee. Justice, Peace and Reconciliation Committee. Then we have the Education Committee, and then the Mission and Evangelism. The main role, I saw one, my mentor in this area, I think I saw Reverend Ogola. He was here. Yeah, he is the one who taught us this. And JPRC is the one that goes out there. The work of the JPRC is outside, is totally outside the church. To know what is happening in society. To know what are the needs. So that when mission and evangelism go there, they have a strategy. They go there knowing these are the needs, these are the challenges, this is the culture of the people, and so on and so forth. And therefore, it's able to reach out to the people. And I think this connects very well with the first principle of conversation before confrontation, because it is JPRC that is supposed to start that conversation. If it is a conversation of culture, if it is a conversation of politics, if it is a conversation of any social nature. So this team becomes very, very critical in church. So that once the mission and evangelism go there to preach, then the education is there now to follow up, to teach these people, to continue teaching them, and then helping them to solidify and get strong in their faith. The same way Jesus was teaching. And therefore, what I would say is, even as we think about mission as a church, we also need to also look at those groups that are established and ask ourselves whether they are actually working in our churches, so that they can help in this work, in this noble work of mission. Thank you.
Thank you, Elder Gashagwa. Do you want to say anything? I think Reverend Jihia has a question or comment, and this will be our last comment as we get ready for tea.
Thank you. Mine is actually not a question, but a comment or a sharing, if I may put it that way, in regard to context. Last year, I met a Somali guy who is Christian, and we engaged somewhere. We were seated, we started talking with him. And I asked him why they are so, it's not very likely for the Somalis to become Christians. And he told me no. In fact, what you may not know is that it may be very easy, but you have never come to reach us in our context. So that's how he responded. You come and you want to impose things without giving due consideration to how we live, how we connect in the family, in the community. And until that is cracked, we will never be able to penetrate the Somali community. And I asked him, and how did you become a Christian yourself? He told me they were working with some people somewhere, they were employed, and they were sent to work somewhere which was a bit out of the way. So in the evening, they are very idle. They are seated together, just talking every day. They are like that, waiting for the following day. And one of the people they were with was a Christian, told them. And there were like 4 Muslims and 2 Christians. So one of the Christians told them, instead of us getting so bored, but these Muslims did not know that it was the Bible. It was not a complete Bible. It was just Proverbs. And you know, in Proverbs, there is nowhere Jesus is mentioned. But there are words of wisdom in the book of Proverbs. So every day they would enjoy going through and studying Proverbs in search of wisdom. And they were saying, oh, this is very interesting. Whoever wrote this must be very bright. It applies to daily living. And he said, I actually came to know that it's the Bible by the time we were reading about the virtuous wife in Proverbs 31. I didn't know from the time that we started that we were actually studying the Bible. And I was very angry with my colleague. How can you make us study the Bible and you never told us that it is the Bible? Then this man asked him, I told you to seek for wisdom. Can you say that you're not wiser now than when we started that book? And the Somali guy said, it's called Abdi. Abdi said, yes, I think I am wiser. But the grudge was still hidden inside. He was not happy. So he purposed to study the Bible to counter Christianity. He said, I'll go through the Bible so that I'll be able to now oppose Christianity properly. And as he studied the Bible, God revealed to him the truths about the gospel. And he got born again without any other ministration of preaching to him about Jesus. That's how he became a Christian, and up to date, he is a Christian. And I asked him about his family. He told me the family, we had issues with the family, but later they accepted me. So I can go to the family, we can relate, because our departure is only that one thing. But in terms of our family bond and all that, we are together, and I try to preach to them. But he told me, but the church made a mistake. I lost a brother, a cousin or something, who had converted to Christianity, and they came to bury him in Garissa. And when they came, it's like they put the family aside. So the church is doing their rituals there to bury the guy, and the family is disconnected. And so from that point, they started telling, now you see your people, you don't even have regard for us. That was an opportunity for them to preach and to show the love of the gospel to that family, and problem would have been converted. Interestingly, he told me there are many Somalis who live in South Sea, where we are today, who have told me they would desire to be Christians, but to them they are viewed very negatively by the Christians and suspiciously. So they've never found a safe space for them to actually try to get into the gospel. So context is very important, and he actually told me there are some things, even if I'm a Christian, I'll never leave. I'll not stop going to the toilet with a bottle of water. It is not Muslim, for us it is Somali. It's our culture. And I concur with him, because in Marsabit, for example, when a person dies, he's buried the same day, whether a Christian or whether a Muslim. So there are no formalities like we have here. Elder ambia mchungaji, wacha tupeane siku. There are not those formalities. If you are away, the person will be buried, whether he was a full member or he was not. That is their context. That's how they live. Something on that I would also want to mention, and may sound controversial, is on the woman's guild. Recently, they came up with a uniform. It's sub as a skirt. 8 pieces skirt. I've never seen these ladies in a skirt. That you never work there. Then if they join women's guild, utaiona mtu na hiyo uniform. Putting on hii kitambaa ni shida. That's how they are, all of them. And sometimes they're in black. So you might even think you're Islam. So context is very important. Even as we look at things, we need to look at the entire church. what applies to that context, what applies to the other context. And also I think it's important for us to have continuous training and education. I'm happy recently we were with Dr. Kevin studying a course in Christian apologetics. For me, it is relevant because I have to respond to the Muslims who are in Marsabit. And I need how to defend the Christian faith. I need to continually equip myself. Not that I did not study it when I was doing my theology degree, but I need to keep updating myself with the upcoming trends. And we need that also in the church. Continuous training and